So, welcome. This is Zartech, the Self Advocacy Resource Technical Assistance Center. And today we are talking to Bernard Baker. Um, Bernard, Zartech is all about self advocacy. You want to just talk for a second about the importance of self advocacy?
Self-advocacy is real important because it helps a person to learn what their rights are as a person with a disability and how to become your own self-advocate. If you haven't become your own self-advocate, it teaches you the steps to become a self-advocate. But if you've been an old self-advocate like myself, it helps to have what I call a mentor. If you're a person that's just getting into the movement, or if you're a person that just got a disability, it helps.
Thanks for those kind words about Zartech. Um, so let's talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act. So, Bernard, first of all, I want people to realize that you're a pioneer. You were back there advocating for the Americans with Disabilities Act to be passed. Can you just speak for a second and tell us what inspired you to get involved and to fight for the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Well, I have to bring this back to an old friend of mine, Mark Johnson, who winded up being not only a friend, he winded up being a mentor to me because I was at the Atlanta Center for Independent Living, which was on Memorial and Memorial Drive at the time, and he came to one of our luncheons, which was called Bring Your Own Back Luncheon, BYOB. And Mark came and he talked about this wow, I call it wow now, but he talked about this group called ADAPT. So Mark convinced me to join ADAPT, to go out of town with him to see what they did. My first trip, I'll never forget it. I took suits, ties, and dress shirts. When I got there, people was in jeans, tennis shoes, and maybe little short sleeve shirts, t-shirts. So I looked, I was there for a whole week, and at first I was scared. I'm gonna be honest, I was really scared to do it. But then we went out and we did civil disobedience, that's nonviolent protest. And I had two gentlemen that told me that I couldn't enter a building. I'm the kind of person that you can't tell what they can't do. Cause that put more fire under me in a little bit. So these two policemen told me I couldn't enter this building. Okay, so when they turned their backs, I slid out of my chair, got on my knees, and slid in the doorway. They were looking for me, and I was out of the chair in the building. Then that's the day that I made can't ain't in my vocabulary one of my famous words. Because they was looking for me, and I slid right between their legs and slid right in that door.
So, what I know that you were one of the
And
people that crawled up.
that was to get back then. It was to get people so that people with disabilities could ride the bus.
Right. And that led to the Americans with Disabilities Act.
And that led to the Americans with Disabilities Act. But we fought for it for a long time. I'd sit in front of Greyhound buses with them running. I sit behind Greyhound buses with them running.
So that's when you were chained to
Right.
Greyhound
I
buses.
chained myself to Greyhound buses from the front to the back to where you put the luggage. So you name it, I've been on all parts of a Greyhound bus.
So, and I know that you were part of that famous action that where people got out of their chairs and crawled up the steps of the United States Capitol.
Yeah, back in my days I could crawl, but it doesn't stop me from crawling now. I still crawl sometimes when I have to.
But what was it like crawling up the steps of the United States Capitol in support of the ADA?
Actually, when I did it, I didn't even realize I did it until I got to the top. I was so excited to be there and to hear people with the chants. And again, I'm the type of person that you can't tell what they can't do. I've been that way, I guess, all my life because my mom and dad don't believe in, that you can't do something. You put your mind and you set your heart and you go till you can get it done. But it was real amazing to me because I followed these people behind these steps, up these steps, and actually didn't realize I did it till I did it.
I hear you.
People were sitting on the bottom of the steps, and I'm steady crawling up on my hands and knees and on my behind. And all of a sudden, I look down and I'm up these steps. I'm saying, God, what is this? So, I figured that there was two things. There was the excitement and adrenaline going through my body that had never been there before. And like I said, I'm one of the people you don't tell that they can't do nothing. And when I looked up, I'm up the steps and everybody else is on the bottom. It made me feel pretty good. But after taking that trip with Mark with those suits and ties, it made me realize that this is something that had to come back to Georgia. And I told Mark on the way back, I said, Mark, this is something that needs to come to Georgia. And he said, guess what? You want to take it to Georgia, you start it.
And you did.
And that's when we got together and we started Atlanta Adapt.
That's awesome. Now, Bernard, I've heard you talk about lack of accessibility and how a friend of yours actually died, and that's what inspired you and gave you the desire to want to change things.
It was one night back in May. I'll never forget it. I can't remember the date, but I do remember the month. Me and a friend of mine, we went to high school together. We grew up together. So we was just like brothers. We had met two friends of ours that are able-bodied and still able-bodied as far as I know now. We had went to meet them at a train station, Georgia State train station, as a matter of fact. I stayed in Capitol Homes, and so did we both. He stayed in one apartment, and I stayed on another one. So we had went to meet them. So after we met them, we sit around and we talked for a while, and they said it was time for them to go. So we were crossing Memorial Drive, taking them back to the train station, and this lady ran the red light. And when she ran the red light, she hit him. And he was in an electric chair, and she folded that chair up. These electric chairs you can't fold. I mean, she folded it up, and he flipped in the air 3 times. And when he hit the ground, he said, am I dying? I said, no, you're too stubborn to die. He said, I can't be no stubborn than you are. So that's one thing that got me into the movement. But what keeps me in the movement now is seeing people do what other people say couldn't been done. Because like I said, I'm a firm believer that you can do anything you want to if you set your mind to it.
Right.
And I've been through a lot now, but my mind is getting back to getting into the movement and doing what I need to do. Not only for myself, but people with disabilities. And the Americans with Disabilities Act taught me, that you may give out, but you never give up.
So yeah, there's been a lot of uh, things going on where people are trying to change the Americans Disabilities Act and kind of dumb it down, make it ineffective. So what have you got to say to self-advocates?
What I have to say to self-advocates is you gotta stand your grounds. And what I mean by standing your grounds, if it means you're in a chair, you got to roll your ground and you got to hold your ground is what I call it. But I call it standing your grounds. I tell people a lot of times, this movement sort of the same movement that Martin Luther King and John Lewis fought for us. Nobody owes us nothing. We got to get out and get it. And if we mess around and let people take the Americans with Disabilities Act and just chop it any way they want to, we don't have another law. We don't have another chance to be free. So that's why I say we, as people with disabilities, and as another friend of mine used to say, temporary able-bodied people. Sam Mitchell, bless his heart, he used to say temporary able-bodied people. And I used to wonder what he meant when he said temporary. And he broke it down to me like this: anybody, if you live long enough, you'll have a disability. And for people that don't have a disability, don't down the people that do have a disability, because we have a mind and we're capable of doing whatever we need to do. So, as I'm going to say to you, is join the fight. It's going to always be a fight for people under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's going to be a fight in this world as long as we, people with disabilities, get together and stand up for what we believe in and what we're capable of. We're capable of doing a lot of things. People told me I wouldn't be able to do anything. The doctors told my mom I wouldn't make it past 5. Hey, folks, I'm about to be 62. And I know it wasn't nobody but my faith and my family and my belief. To say this is to say, if we let Congress and all these other temporary able-bodied people take the Americans with Disability Act away from us and chop it up like they want to, we don't have another chance to be free. We have to do what we had to do to stay together.
It's about getting involved. It's about voting.
It's about getting involved, voting, and standing up for your rights. If you don't know how to do it, go find an advocate. We've got people out here every day that advocates for people with disabilities to get things done. But if you don't know how to do it, you gotta listen to your advocate. I'm not saying you don't have the right to disagree. You have that right. And you never let anybody take your dreams and your goals away from you. But if you disagree with somebody that's trying to help you, at least come to a common ground. And my main thing is to get the job done.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Zartec, Self Advocacy Resource Technical Assistance Center, has a great website that can help people to figure out how to self advocate. Um, but let me just say this. A lot of people complain that the Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't do enough. And again, in my book, that means it's time to stand up and speak out, you know?
It may not do enough right now, but I look at it like this: it's better than what we had. And if we aren't careful, temporary able-bodied people and society will take it away from us. Nobody owes me anything. I get what I get because the good Lord woke me up and gave me another chance to get it right. So nobody owes me anything. I fight for every day of my life to keep living in my community.
Well, and the Americans with Disabilities Act gave you something to fight with. I mean, when MARTA refused to put the ramps on the big buses, you were one of the people that took them to court.
It gave me my freedom, and it gave me access to say that I ain't taking it no more, that I'm just not going to sit at home and be somebody's poster child. I'll be somebody's poster man. I'm my own boss. I have 2 businesses of my own. I'm now getting ready to do a third one. And I don't let anybody from anywhere take your dreams and your goals away from you. But also for the people that don't have disabilities, you got to remember this. If you live long enough, you will have a disability. And your disability doesn't have to be physical and it doesn't have to be mental. But if you live long enough, you will become disabled. That's a quote from Sam Mitchell, who was one of my best friends. Uh, and Sam believed in fighting for the ADA. And one promise I did make Sam, I would fight for the Americans with Disabilities Act to stay around in the country and in the United States as long as I lived. And I intend to keep that dream and that goal alive if I have to do it through a chair with a sip and puff. Because I have dreams and goals in my life. And you don't let anybody take your dreams and your goals away from you. And when they're taking your dreams and your goals away from you, they're taking your manhood or your womanhood. And I don't let anybody take my manhood away from me. I don't let anybody take my freedom away from me. There ain't but one person can take my freedom away from me, and that's God.
All right. Well, thank you, Bernard. Those were some very bold and powerful words.
Well, that came from my heart.